Okay, good evening, everyone. This is Sachin Karnik here from Angel Wing LLC. Today is the 8th of December, 2024. I want to welcome everyone to this evening's presentation and contemplative discussion, conversation on the religious traditions of the world. We are continuing from last time on Genesis 1.1, the Hebrew tradition, which is also, the Hebrew Bible and sometimes also called the Old Testament, based on a Christian viewpoint. We're going to be focusing on the very interesting ideas in the Genesis chapter for a while. I don't know how much time it's all going to take. Not in any rush. It's not about covering just a lot of material. It's more about wisdom and more about contemplation. But I will try to present some very interconnected ideas. So to continue from last time, we had begun talking about the intelligent design argument. The intelligent design argument, or the perspective of intelligent design, is right in the very first verse of the Bible. The very first verse of the Bible states very clearly that there is a monotheistic supreme being. That is what is being described. And it is not described as a male or female in that sense. There's no maleness or femaleness explicitly described in that narrative in Genesis 1 and subsequent verses. What is described is this word Yahweh. I mean, it's like one who has no name, one who cannot be described. There's many ways that God is talked about, but there is this notion, at least from where we are, from our intellectual level, that there is a transcendent, supreme, unparalleled being. Being meaning it's actually a being. It's not just some abstract energy or something like that. Now, again, what is the nature of that being? What is that divinity, God, Yahweh, Jehovah? These are the words that are used. And I'm going to only stick to the language that is there in the Hebrew Bible, because I want to cover Judaism to whatever extent I can. So I want to stay true to that and try to present these things objectively. So what possibly is that? It's very interesting. Is there actually a creator that is transcendent to the material creation? Right? So see the question carefully. From where we are, even through the lens of tradition, we have so many traditions of the world. They have been developed over time. Nonetheless, what is our experience? We experience this world of names and forms, the mountains and trees and the suns and the galaxies and whatnot. That is our experience through our senses. Is there a cause to all of creation, meaning all of reality, that doesn't have a cause? See, otherwise, if we put the question a different way, we wind up in the problem of infinite regress. The problem of infinite regress is as follows: that yes, the world has some cause. Maybe there's a big bang, or there's some space-time is created somewhere. But then if you say that there's some being that is God, monotheistic God, who created God? Like little children ask that. Well, if God created everything, who created God? They said, somebody could say, well, some greater God, some greater being created. Well, who created that being? Who created that being? Who created that being? And this is called infinite regress. This is the problem of infinite regress. It's the same problem is present in the cause-effect relationship. What we see in the material world can be considered to be an effect. But the cause is present in the effect, but the cause is not directly seen. I'll give you some examples of this cause-effect relationship and then try to show you how the monotheistic God presence, or the notion of a monotheistic deity, is established through the cause-effect relationship analysis. Let's use some simple examples. I'm holding a water bottle in my hand right now. This is a seltzer sparkling water, Happy Belly from Amazon, zero calories. I just got it in the delivered today. Okay, I'm holding it in my hand. This is the effect. Now, this is an analogy. This is the effect. What is the cause of this bottle? Well, plastic is there. Several people, maybe many people were involved in designing the shape of the bottle, what should go in there, how the water is to go inside, how the water is to be carbonated. So much thought and all that has gone. But there were actually people. There's actually a person or multiple people that were present, actually as human beings. Maybe they're still present, who actually created this. But when I'm looking at this bottle, can I see all those people? Do I know who they are? No. I cannot see them when I'm seeing this bottle. Now, I can do some research and try to find out who they were and whatnot. Maybe there's some pictures and I have to do quite a bit of research to figure out exactly who they were. And maybe I can even meet them. Isn't it so? If I decide that I want to find out the people who actually designed this Happy Belly, carbonated water bottle from Amazon, I want to know every single person involved in that. And maybe there was a top boss who actually, that's the brainchild of that person. What do I have to do to discover that? I have to do some research. I have to call Amazon. I have to go on the internet. I have to meet some people. And then I may even know, based on some of my research. But if I want to meet the person actually, what do I have to do? I have to get in touch with that person somehow. That person has to accept me and say that, yes, I'm okay to meet with you. Isn't it so? But if I'm just looking at this bottle, I cannot see all those people. I don't have any access to all of that. All I'm looking at is the effect, not the cause. And that's true with all of the objects in the world, everything. So the same analogy, this is an analogy, is used to the natural world, is used for the natural world. That there is this natural creation. It must have a cause. Now, assume for a moment that it does have a cause. What is that? So this is where the Bible's ontological teaching comes into the picture, that the cause is outside of the cause-effect relationship. Because the cause-effect relationship always is within time. I'm just reviewing a couple of points. We talked a little bit about this in the last couple of recordings. I'm just putting a little bit of an emphasis on this. Obviously, even if I find the person who invented that bottle, that person also has a cause. That person was born in this world from his parents or her parents or whatever. And keep going back. But is there a cause with a capital C that doesn't have any cause? See the question. Just stay with this question. Is there an intelligence, a great power, a great intelligence, a great being, an all-encompassing being beyond our capacity to imagine, think, beyond the material creation, from whom or due to whose thought or due to his will has created the creation? Is that so? And if that is so, how do we know that? How do we know that there is even such a being? How do we know that? And even if we believe it somehow, is that something that is a fabrication of the human mind? There's another perspective in all of this, that human beings, through these traditions, have created the concept of God and are worshiping God. That's another camp of people who believe this, the atheists primarily. And those who are theists, Theist, theistic, perspective, believes through revelation that this is revealed through Moses in the mind, as I mentioned it before, that this is revealed, and then there's to be faith in the revelation. These are called faith-based approaches, faith-based traditions, faith-based access to that which is beyond time. The argument can be made, and many theologians have made the argument, whether they're Jewish or Christian theologians, they make the argument. And by the way, when I say argument, I'm using that word philosophically. I don't mean like they're arguing with somebody. That's not like that. They're making a logical series of statements. That's what that means. And coming to a certain conclusion. They make the argument that with a capital T, that which is transcendent to the mind, transcendent to the cause-effect relationship, which is detected by our brain, our mind, is only accessible through an act of faith in that extraordinary being that reveals itself or himself. I'm just using that colloquial, that through revelation there is access. These three traditions, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, are revelation-based traditions. They are not experimentation-based. What we call Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism, Confucianism, Taoism, all of them are experimentation-based. That's just my analysis on this. Someone may have a different point of view on that. Maybe. But they don't talk about revelation. Even the life of the Buddha, he wasn't called the Buddha. That's not his name. He was a prince who left the home in search of the truth, and was doing fasting and doing all kinds of spiritual practices, and then sat under the tree and aligned himself, and then reached the stage of nirvana, and then he was called the Buddha. The word is pronounced, by the way, Buddha. We say Buddha and all. Those are our English pronunciations. The word Buddha comes from the word buddhi in Sanskrit, which means intelligence. Buddhi means intelligence, and Buddha means awakened intelligence. So there's no question of revelation or anything like that. There's no concept of God also there. There's no concept of God even in Jainism. Jainism and Buddhism have no revelatory concept of God. They have masters, spiritual teachers and gurus and enlightened beings. We'll talk about that later on. These are atheistic traditions. Completely they're atheistic. There is no theistic God in Jainism or in Buddhism. And in much of Hinduism, there are strands of this kind. It's not atheism, but it's monism, or sometimes it's called pantheism. We get to these distinctions later on. I'm just putting a little comparative bent here, just so you know. In the Abrahamic traditions, these three, Old Testament, New Testament, and then the Quran, the three main texts, they are not experimentation-based. They are revelation-based. And this is one of the key and core fundamental differences between the Eastern approach, the Eastern traditions, and the Western traditions.
Sachin, I have a question.
When
you say experimentation, what do you mean by that?
All right, that's a good question. Thank you for the question. What is meant by experimentation? Well, let's look at, for example, in India, we have the Vedas. We have the what we call the Indian tradition, the Hindu tradition. I don't like using that word because it's a misrepresentation. How did that begin? That began with individuals who went into nature and they started to meditate. They started to meditate and synchronize their mind and energies and develop yogic postures. And they tried to go beyond the vortex of the mind. And then something was tapped into. So that which they discovered, or somehow they entered upon an abstract reality, an infinite, vast reality that is called the Brahman, Brahman. All that word means is that it means vast and unending. That's what that word means. So that's not a revelation from a theistic God. Understand this difference. It's not like there's a Elohim. See this word Elohim in the Jewish tradition, in the Hebrew. These words are there. Elohim means like a kingly person sitting on a throne. This concept is there. There's a monotheistic, all supreme, all powerful, all benevolent, omnipresent being actually. This concept did come later on in India, in the developments later on it came. But in the experimentation, to answer Milu's question, it began through experimentation. Now, one could say that a type of revelation did happen in the minds of those rishis. Rishis are those individuals who are searching for the truth. Something extraordinary was dawning in their mind. So we could say that there is a type of revelation there. You could say that, but again, I'm hesitant to use that word. I'll tell you the reason behind that, because this word revelation is actually used in the Judeo-Christian tradition a lot. And I don't want to confuse the language. So there's another language, that's why the Sanskrit language has its own specific ways of trying to describe this. So how does the Sanskrit language require that? It is called anubhuti. That's the word, actually. It is the word revelation means that the word revelation means that there is someone who is revealing itself to you. That's what the word revelation actually means, that God is revealing to Moses, etc., whatnot. But these people are meditating, and they are in the depth of meditation, inside the caves, inside the mountains, and inside the Himalayas and all that. So they are deeply in the deepest of meditations, and so it is a mystical tradition. So what is dawning in their mind? I would use the word dawning. What is dawning or descending, as some of our other people have talked about? What is descending in their mind is that which is beyond time. It could be the same truth, but again, the approach was very different. It's the same truth, perhaps, maybe. But what is dawning in their mind is that dimension which they described as a vast, unending substratum of reality. Let's be clear about what they did, what they're talking about in the Upanishadic, in the ancient times in what we call Hinduism. By the way, there were no temples and all these scriptures, and none of that was there. There was only meditation. There was nothing other than meditation. And these people were sitting for meditation. They are trying to realize the ultimate truth. They go into caves. They go into the nature. They are one with nature. They dissolve the boundary with nature completely. You see, this is how this began. Now, when they did this, and when a person is intent, we could hypothesize that they were praying also, because a prayer to the unknown, they don't know what is beyond in the higher reality. But some of the things that are described are so fantastic. This is where the word yogi comes from. You see, the word yogi comes from the word yog. Yog means to connect, right? So the word yog comes from the word yuj, which means to connect 2 points together. So the word yog means to connect together, and the yogi is an individual who is intent on connecting with the higher reality. Because of the mystery of life, that I want to discover, who am I? It is a meditative process. It is a reflective process. It is not necessarily a devotional process. The devotional strands developed later on in Hinduism. But in Judaism, or in the Hebrew Bible, what we find are devotional strands developing right away. They are developing in a monotheistic sense. That there is a monotheistic deity, a being that is revealing to Moses, and then Moses reveals what he has heard and learned and whatnot to everybody else. And then all others have to then follow that. It is that type of approach. It is not this other approach. Now, you could say from a comparative point of view that they're talking about the same thing. Maybe, maybe not. We don't know. I mean, I don't want to say that necessarily, because there's a lot of controversy about it. You see, maybe, but it's a matter of discovery. Are they actually talking about the same thing? Maybe. If you go into comparative study of these traditions, there's a lot of interesting connecting points and overlaps, right? But nonetheless, I don't want to confuse it at all. The point in Genesis 1.1 is that there is, beyond causality and time, which is very similar to what the Eastern meditators came upon, because they also went beyond psychological time, space-time causality. In the depth of meditation, if a person takes an internal journey, my God, I mean, you have to go beyond the noise of the mind completely. It's not an easy thing to do. And try to do that, it's extremely difficult. You see, again, we're going to talk about that much later on. It's a very protracted subject. The point of comparison simply is that revelation means that a being that is transcendent means beyond the material creation that we experience, who has created the material creation, is revealing itself, or I'm going to say himself or itself, in the mind of the prophets in the in the Old Testament, and then as Christianity then comes into the picture, is manifesting as Jesus or through Jesus, either way. This is where Christianity is centered around Jesus himself. That's the manifested form there. That's not the case in Judaism. Moses doesn't have the same stature as Jesus does. In terms of the theological stature that they give to Moses. Moses is considered a prophet. Jesus is considered by the Christians an incarnation, or the incarnation. That's the difference. You see, so anyway, there's a lot of stuff inside here, so we want to go very carefully. So, yes, it's a beautiful question, and it's a very contemplative question. It's a very profound question also. But the language that came about, the Sanskrit language that came about, it came about out of what was heard. That is called Shruti, S-H-R-U-T-I. Shruti means that which is heard, not that which is imagined. So in the depth of meditation, in the depth of dhyana, as it is called in the Sanskrit language, these rishis, that's what they're called, R-I-S-H-I. Rishi means researcher, means researching inside, researching the mysteries of existence through the internal journey. And in that, there is the opening of a dimension. I would put it that way more than revelation. We can say revelation, and in fact, there are words like that are very similar. But those words came later on. There is an opening into a dimension that is not constructed by the human mind. That is the Eastern approach in general. In the Western approach, in the Western monotheistic approach, that dimension that is beyond the mind is where you wind up in the mystical traditions of Judaism. And we're going to talk about that. There's a fantastic scripture called the Zohar, Z-O-H-A-R. We're going to talk about Jewish mysticism in detail later on. I'm just setting the stage right now. It's going to take us some time. But that's, it's one thing to believe in God. Someone can say, I have deep faith, like a Jewish person, for example, Hebrew person, who deeply, deeply, deeply believes and prays and does all whatnot, right? All the way through. But then what? What if the individual wants to see God? How does that happen? So the approach that is shown is a faith approach, to believe in a dualistic sense that the Lord is here, up high, the Most High, that language is there, and I am here. I am his devotee, I am subservient to the Lord, I am the penitent person, etc. It is a dualistic approach, dualistic path. And those paths are there in the Eastern traditions also, but it's a dualistic path. So in the dualistic path, there is the acknowledgement of the following: that there is a transcendent, one unparalleled being that is God, that is Yahweh or Jehovah, or the one who has no name, like this, beyond the name. I am that I am. That expression is there. So there's the acceptance of that. Then there is the conviction that God is real and that I am connected to him through a relationship. So it is a relational connection. In the Eastern tradition, these people are just doing meditation. There's a relationship with nature and all that, but it's not like a personal human level relationship. It's human to human. It's human to divine. So this is what is meant by the covenant and all. It's the divine that has a relationship with the human beings, and it's a relational connection. It's not that kind of a connection in ancient meditative traditions. It did come later on in theistic strands later on. You see this point. Someone could be doing just meditation in nature. There's no concept of God. Why does there have to be a concept of God? If you have a concept of God, you're the theistic person. If you don't have a concept of God and said, I don't want any concept in my mind at all, I just want to explore completely as it is. Yes, there are people even today who try such things. Sure, why not? You can try it and see what happened. And so what did they come upon? That's the great mystery. Now see, there's like 100 things I want to say all at one time, and I won't be able to say them all. See, let's rein it in just a little bit back again to another point. When a person has a belief in God, when there is a strong conviction, let's say someone studies this Hebrew Bible thoroughly, I'm just using that as an example, and comes to a conviction that yes, God exists. It's a conviction. It's a psychological conviction. It is the development of faith. All right? What does that do? Why is that even beneficial? It is beneficial because it is an anchor. The mind gets anchored through a belief. The belief or faith is an anchor into the higher power, higher reality, higher consciousness. It is relying like a child relies on the mother for protection or the father for protection. That is why the word father is used in the Bible also. It could be allegorical that way, because we are considered to be the children of God in the Abrahamic traditions. You see, but in the Eastern tradition, again, just slight comparison, if you come upon this vast, unending reality, there's no question of any monotheistic God over there. There is just a consciousness, unending consciousness, non-dual consciousness. Upanishads talk about that. So then where is the question of any personal God? They would say the personal God and all these things are more psychological. But that non-dual, infinite Brahman or infinite unending consciousness, which is present everywhere and everything is present within it, and it's non-dualism, right? That is the actual reality. That's what the ancients would say in the Eastern side, on the Eastern side. But in the Western, yes, at that time, exactly. And see, even before the Upanishads came about, the Vedas were there before. And in the Vedas, there is this worship of all kinds of polytheistic deities. There's a sun god and moon god, and there's an air god, and that everything was considered to be having some divinity. They turned everything into a god, essentially. And then as that developed further, as the internal research developed further, they came upon this vast, unending consciousness that they called Brahman, Brahman. There's many other words for it, but that's the main word. And they said that is the actual reality. It's a mystical realization. It's a meditative realization. And then so much came out of it, which massive subject. I'm just trying to show a comparison here, just a comparison. You don't see Moses doing some kind of a mystical meditation. He came into the Hebrew tradition. These were all slaves and all that. He escaped, and then he became familiar with that, and he had his doubts and all that too. And then he says, "I want to see." So then God Himself reveals, and He says, what is thy name? He says, "I am. I am." That's that word, "I am." If you translate that, that's exactly the same word in the Upanishads, Soham, I am. It means exactly the same thing. Aham saha, I am that I am. Exactly the same language is there. So there is a possibility, some scholars believe this way, and I don't know how much evidence there is, but what we call Judaism and what we call Hinduism were actually just one people. They were actually just the same people. It just, as time went on, the languages developed and other things developed. But if you look at the original language of the Old Testament and the statements in the Upanishads, you'll find a tremendous amount of similarity in the way God is described, or God describes himself. That I am, that I am. Tattvam asi. Exactly the same thing it's a great statement from the Upanishads. And by the way, the word Upanishad, all that simply means is to go near and sit near at the feet of an enlightened being who then shows that pathway to awaken into the highest of consciousness. That's all that word means. And sometimes I put some Sanskrit words here because just over the years I've kind of studied some of that. And so I'll be happy to share that with you. But it's good to go to the original words. It's good to go to the original words because even words like Yahweh, Jehovah, these are words we're using, right? But in reality, what does God say? He says, I am that I am. You cannot, it's beyond name. See, language, thought, words, they don't reach there. They don't reach there. So there's several points here that the revelation comes through Moses. And the first 5 books are the Pentateuch. They're very important in the Jewish tradition. The tradition has come, it's one of the oldest traditions. But this revelation has come. And then from that revelation, the devotion begins, faith is there, the commandments are there, and there's a lot of stuff that actually happens. Now, we're already at 7:30. There's a couple more points. Let me just cover them quickly because I don't want to miss this. Give me just a second here. So there's a couple of things I just want to mention in this same analysis. First of all, the creation narrative in Genesis 1, it unfolds a structured, rhythmic progression of 6 days, culminating in the sanctification of the 7th day, the Sabbath. The 7th day is called the Sabbath. This orderly account underscores the inherent harmony and purpose in creation, with each stage marked by divine approval, articulated in the refrain, and God saw that it was good. What does all that mean? See, it means that there is a structured, rhythmic creation, and there is inherent harmony in the creation, and there is purpose in the creation. Okay, now having said that, that brings us to the PowerPoint, which I didn't even get to. This is what I wanted to start with this. I didn't even get to that, actually. We need like 4 or 5 hours, to even crack the subject on this stuff. Just hold on 1 second here. Give me just a moment. Okay, so intelligent design. Intelligent design theories, a connection with biblical ideas, right? So this notion of intelligent design means that there is a great, powerful, infinite intelligence that has created all of the material creation that we are able to perceive. You see? And that is what is meant by the intelligent design argument. It's a fascinating area to understand. There are 4 points here that need to be kept in mind to understand the intelligent design concept. The intelligent design is the theory that certain features of the universe and living things are best explained by an intelligent cause rather than natural selection or chance. You see this first point here? Natural selection is Darwin's theory, the Darwinian theory. And chance is like, it's just by random molecules and atoms coming together and somehow all the beings and species and everything is created. So the intelligent design argument states, or the theory states, that the universe has an intelligent cause. Why? Why is that? There are 3 reasons why: irreducible complexity, specified complexity, and the fine-tuning argument. Irreducible complexity is the idea that certain biological systems cannot function without all their parts and are therefore unlikely to have evolved through natural selection. I'll give you an example of this. Just take one cell. Take one human cell. The research that's been done in cell biology with so many tiny little organelles. It's a factory inside. And there are trillions of cells like this. The brain itself has some 83 billion estimated number of cells. How did this happen? the DNA, the way it works with nature, everything in its right place, in its own way. Is it just random? Is it just chance? Or is there an intelligent designer behind it? Genesis 1.1 will say there's an intelligent designer. There's the cause of all causes that doesn't have a cause. The Eastern traditions will say, also they use the word, the word intelligence is used. There's a technical Sanskrit word for that. It's a little bit more technical than what we are talking about. But it's called Mahat Tattva, the great substance. And that substance evolves from that infinite consciousness. But that is a Vedanta subject. I don't want to go into that right now, but there's a connection there. So the intelligence is active in the creation. And what the intelligence we have is a drop of that infinite intelligence. Now, look at the biblical language on that also. Biblical language will say that the creation has a purpose. It has divine approval. God meaning that infinite being saw that it was good. And theologically, this orderliness reflects the concept of cosmic harmony. The word in Hebrew is Tikkun, tikkun, if I'm saying that right. Maybe I'm not, I don't know. That means cosmic harmony, suggesting that the universe is not a product of chaos or conflict, but a deliberate design. Now that's darn interesting, that's very interesting. That the universe has been designed. The galaxies, look at the Milky Way galaxy, it has a structure. Look at the Andromeda galaxy. Look at what's been discovered in the scientific world today. And now with the James Webb, my God, so many theories are going to be turned upside down because of the discoveries of James Webb. Ancient galaxies that, according to Big Bang Theory, the estimate is probably not correct. So what is, the mystery of creation is beyond our imagination, but what we can see, what is in the purview of our senses, has cosmic harmony. Well, where did that cosmic harmony come from? There is a super intelligence active from which we have obtained intelligence. That is why the Bible then would say, interpretively, that God created the human being in his own image. The concept of the image is there, that the human being's creation is there, that is called imago-Dei, D-E-I, I-M-A-G-O-D-E-I. This is on the sixth day. Humanity's creation is on the sixth day and is presented as the crowning achievement of the creative process, highlighting the unique role of humans in the stewardship of creation. The stewardship that man, meaning human being, has been given purview of this entire planet. And we can see that today, that is true. Because of our bigger brain, our bigger intelligence. You see, so the point here is that there is a transcendental intelligence at work. If we were to draw a parallel with the Eastern Sanskrit terminology, that would be called the great substance. It's called Mahat Tattva, M-A-H-A-T-T-A-T-T-V-A. That's what it's called. When we hold classes in Vedanta in the future sometime, we'll go into all that in a lot of detail. But that'll be something apart from angel wing. That's like a more specialized area to really probe into. But you can see the parallel here. You can also see the word Buddha, how that comes. The word Buddha means the awakening of the intelligence, meaning that our intelligence is dormant. In the Judeo-Christian tradition, they talk about it having a spiritual awakening, being reborn again. But it's a different kind of rebirth. One is a theistic type. This other one is more seeing the transitoriness of the world and awakening out of the flux of the world. That is the Buddha's approach. The Eightfold Noble Path, things like that. It's more based on observation of the fleeting nature of reality, and then awakening that way. seeing the suffering of the world, things like that, the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path. You know, but on the theistic side, it is a relational re-establishment back into divine communion with God due to the fall that has come by eating the forbidden fruit. And on that subject, we will cover that next time because we're already at 7:42. Otherwise, we will need 2 or 3 more hours to talk about the forbidden fruit, and then we'll all wind up going to Acme to get some fruit. So we don't want to do that right now. Okay. So open it up for conversation and discussion. And whatever thoughts you may have, there's a lot. I mean, if you want me to go on, I can just go on as long as you want. I mean, there's no end to this. It's an endless exploration. It's amazing, actually, but we'll save the forbidden fruit story and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And there's a phenomenal parallel with that, with the Vedanta tradition, with the Upanishadic tradition. And there are some really deep parallels there, which we will talk about. And with the Gita, and when we talk about the Gita sometime, in chapter 15, there's the upside down tree that is described there also. So we'll see some parallels there. So amazing stuff is still coming, but there's no way to talk about all that in short time. We need, many, many, many hours, slowly but surely. Your thoughts and comments, please.